I used to live in Japan, but recently I moved to a town somewhere in America. At our town, there was a story going around that a cult had a cabin somewhere in the woods near our town, and that they were doing incarnations, summoning spirits and specters, the usual paranormal stuff. Me and my friend Jack, who I had met when I first came to this town, didn't really believe in paranormal, so when we had the opportunity to do so, we would every so often accompany the section of where the cabin was rumoured to be and search around for it. It didn't take long, since on our fifth time we found where it was. The cabin itself was completely hideous. It was infested with cockroaches, spiders, and even some centipedes. The left side was decayed slightly, and the right side had a bit of a termite problem. At first it looked like any old run-down cabin. Then we took a second, much closer look. That was when the horrid stench hit us. It was horrible. I gagged and almost vomited. Even though I was busy dealing with the stench, Jack was able to get a look at the walls. They were covered with signs, upside-down crosses, blood-red eyes, and the most frightening part? Bodies of people, completely stripped of their clothing and nailed to the walls of the cabin. I thought of calling the police or running. Jack, however, horrified he was, insisted on going into the cabin. "I'm not believing any of this. It's probably just some really good decor," he said. As reluctant as I was, I pushed onward, Jack leading with his flashlight. We opened the door slowly. That was when I couldn't take it anymore. I vomited onto the grass just outside to the left of the cabin. The reason I vomited was even worse than the stench outside. Just in the front door was a dead dog. It had been butchered and left to rot. The worst thing is, it was a local dog that went missing just 2 days before we found the cabin. Jack gently pushed the dog aside so we could get into the cabin. He waited a bit for me, and we kept going. Inside was like the exterior. Only exception was blood-red runes replacing the bodies. We entered into the main living room of the cabin. It had a big ritual circle. The walls were different too. This time now sporting words such as devil, the beast, our master, the end, and much more terrifying words. Such as the runes in the eyes, it was blood red, except this time it seemed like the blood was real. That was when I figured out that the other drawings were simply dried and didn't look as clear as these. The more I figured out, the worse I felt. If the others were dried, wouldn't that mean that these are fresh or were just made? That was when I had it. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned to the cabin door, and I saw what I can never unsee. A tall, slender figure, covered in intestines, blood, organs, and everything gross and putrid. It was blocking the cabin door. That was when I screamed as loud as I could. I turned back to look at Jack, though he still looked like Jack. The man I looked at was carrying a knife. He had a grin on his face, widening by the second. I backed away from him, but he grabbed my arm and dragged me closer. I struggled, trying to get away, but his grip was locked firmly. I watched in horror as the knife was raised. That was when I made a last-ditch effort. That was when I kicked him in the forbidden zone, which worked, and I ran towards the direction of the door. That was when I bumped into the slender figure again. Now I could make it out to its face. What I saw wasn't human. It looked like the face of something out of the depths of hell itself. I shambled back a bit. Then, remembering Jack was there, I moved to the right. I found a window, the only window in the entire cabin. I tried to open it, but it simply didn't budge. I turned back in shock as I realized that this was how I was going to end. I was going to be murdered in some satanic cabin by my friend. I crouched down, now in tears, and closed my eyes. I waited for the knife to end it all. I waited, but eventually nothing happened. So I slowly opened my eyes and saw that it was daytime. Jack, or possessed Jack, had collapsed on the floor, still clenching the knife. The slender figure was gone. I tried at the window again, and now that it was daytime, I saw that it was locked. I unlocked it and opened it. How silly I thought that I didn't check for the locks. I made a mental note to always do that and then proceeded to the exit via the window, carrying Jack through it first. I ran to our campsite, put Jack in his tent, and went into mine. I recapped on what happened and then put this in my diary. Though this wasn't the nearest death experience I've ever had, it was definitely the most extreme and grotesque. I waited for Jack to wake up, and then we headed back to town. I never told anyone what happened, and I definitely didn't tell Jack, who is now my best friend of all time, that he almost killed me.